Welcome to AVoice for Creators. I'm your host, Daniel Norton. In this episode, which is probably going to be kind of short, this is going to be a scatter shot. I got a few different things I want to talk about. Number one, I want to talk a little bit about light in presentation. So very specifically for photography, I guess, or videography. And the other thing I want to talk about is maybe redefining how we define ourselves, which connects back to last episode a bit. It's kind of like a supplemental thing to that. So first of all, let me handle the light thing. So I had gotten a few different emails from Mark. Thanks, Mark. Mark loves to write in. I love to hear from Mark. I'd love to hear from you guys. If you want to write into the show, avoice@dnphoto.com is my email. You can either send me an email or you can attach a voice message if you want me to play something on the show specifically. In any case, that information is in the show notes, as well as a link to my Discord server. If you haven't joined the Discord server, jump on over there and join. Jump into the photo rooms, jump into the gaming rooms, because I also have a lot of stuff. The gaming section seems a little bit more busy, guys. So if you want to compete with them, you got to get over there. And in addition, you can find a link to my Patreon if you want to support the channel that way. But getting all that out of the way, let's talk a little bit about light. So number one, Mark talked a little bit about, or he asked me, he had seen the Mentoring Marissa episode, the recent one where I show her how to make a super simple portrait. And he asked if he could get some inside information or see the pictures before they were edited, so we could see what we did with Marissa. We really didn't do anything to those images. So if you're looking at the images on the Mentoring Marissa headshot video and you see them pop up and you're like, wow, I'd like to see unedited videos, you are looking at them. And the reason why I bring this up is not because I'm trying to flex, but because it also ties in a little bit to the AI idea that Mark was talking about, where like if we understand light or we know how light should work, it'll be easier for us to know when something is fake or real. And it also ties into the idea that he's talking about light being important. And so all of this kind of works together to create something, right? We're in a world where people are having a harder and harder time knowing what is real and what's not. So you might wonder, well, then what's the advantage of even doing it in camera or doing it for real or making it presentable immediately when people are going to think it's retouched anyways, or people are going to think I did something in post anyways, or people are going to think an AI did something to it anyways, right? What is the advantage of doing it in camera? Part of this comes down, again, to a philosophy point of view, which is the knowledge of knowing that you did it, right? The hands-onness of it, the feeling of accomplishment when we create something is much different when it's a craft versus an automated process that happens after the fact. That's not to say that sitting down in front of the computer and doing a lot of retouching isn't its own thing, its own reward, its own craft. But if you're doing it, and I've talked about this before, if you're doing it because you're trying to, I'm air quoting here, fix something, if you're doing it because you have to make it presentable, that's when it becomes burdensome. So learning to master your craft, whether it be illustration, whether it be lighting, whether it be Photoshop, will give you a different, and in my opinion, a greater sense of accomplishment. So learn your craft, master your craft, take pride in the things that you do. If you sit down with your work at the end of the day and think, oof, this is going to take so much to make it presentable, I don't even want to show it to the subject, then we need to step back and master our craft. Now, if you shoot things with the idea of fixing them or even putting them through some kind of AI, that's cool. That's using technology, that's changing, that's adapting, which you've talked about before as a positive. So we're getting something out of it. What we want to do is get the most out of it because that allows us to give the most back. Okay, so that was the first thing. The second thing is going back to what we talked about in the last episode, which is spreading out and taking a wider view of life. I've been thinking more and more about the idea of, and this, maybe this won't catch on immediately, but the idea of instead of even saying I'm a photographer as opposed to I'm a fashion photographer or even I'm a creator, to say something like, I capture images to make people's lives better. I help people understand more about themselves through my art. Whatever it might be, right? I teach people through visual media. So what I'm saying here is maybe your description can be more exacting, or your job title, if you will, can be more exacting while also being more encompassing. If you haven't already, one of the best ways to support this podcast is to rate it on your podcatcher of choice, 5 stars ideally, and write a review. And if you do, I'll read it here. So here's a new review this week from CP Music Photo. Essential listening, 5 stars. I first came across Daniel on YouTube and loved his down-to-earth and relaxed presentation of photography, which was tempered with real-world experience and knowledge. I particularly loved the porch chats from his home during COVID that took an even more philosophical approach to photography, without being unnecessarily dry and academic. You get all of that and more with this podcast in nice, concise episodes, which are free from interminable gear talk and reviews. And as a bonus, it can be listened to on the go, such as when heading to a shoot or to the shops. What I do miss is not seeing which band t-shirt he's wearing, but you can't have everything. Well, you know that this is actually a video podcast, although you only see the video on Spotify. But yes, if you're going to listen to it on the go, you're driving or whatever, then please do not look. And today I'm actually wearing a t-shirt which has the infamous or famous Daniel Muppet on it. So if you're watching on Spotify, you can see my t-shirt. It's really interesting that this has developed into this, because if I go back to the beginning of the, we'll call them philosophy type chats, what had actually happened was I was doing something, I think something gear related, because, you know, the reality is because of YouTube being a search engine, anything on YouTube that has a product name in it always does better for the most part. I guess if it's really bad product nobody's looking for, that wouldn't be the case. And I had talked about something and I got this long email about, or comment about me being a shill because I use expensive gear. And then followed by like 6 or 8 or 10 paragraphs about why this other product was better, breaking down the specifics of the gear, all the details, what it costs, where you can get it. And I thought, well, why are you a shill when you're talking about good equipment but not bad? So I decided to rant, and I did rant a little bit in my car. And that was, I think, the very first of the quote philosophy videos. And people seem to like just talking about photography. And I realized this. It's like, I mean, I knew this in life, obviously, because as I mentioned before, I like these podcasts to feel like when I'm hanging out at my studio. If you watch those Thursday night live streams that I do for Adorama, the hour before when Seth shows up and we're just talking about what's going on, about his projects and the jobs he's working on, about just, you know, life in general, about what we're shooting, why we're shooting it. This is what I want this podcast to be. And that's why it's good to hear from you guys. So you can obviously reach out by leaving a review, which is very nice, or you can send me an email, avoice@dnphoto.com. You could attach a voice message to it if you want to hear your voice on the air. I will certainly play it. Or you can just send me an email and I'll talk about it or possibly read it, depending on, you know, what you want me to do there. In any case, that's the best way for you to contribute to the show. Reviews, sharing this, giving it 5 stars. If you'd like to support me on Patreon, like I said, there's a link in the show notes. Join the Discord. Let's keep building this community, because I know that people out there in the arts, creators, are talking about the philosophy, the why, everything but gear. And I want to get that out there in the social networks, because I feel like the social networks are mostly filled with gear talk. And there is a gear talk room in my Discord, so you can always talk about gear as well. Thanks for listening, everyone, and I'll talk to you soon.